so glad Halloween is your favorite holiday. I wish there was a holiday so I could force all my fucking friends to talk about
I don't need friends, they disappoint me.
Just kidding, we're not ready.
Radio Free Intimate, episode 92, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. Doing this in the middle of the night, hence the more subdued voice. Don't want to piss anybody off too much. This week, we are talking about probably my favorite death metal band of all time. That, of course, being Intestine Baalism, led by Seiji Kakuzaki. If you couldn't guess, they're a Japanese band with black metal. If you asked me to pick my favorite album, that's pretty difficult. But ever since I heard that first Intestine Baalism album, I was like 14, 15. Very early, old school death metal band for me. Heard it back in high school. It's been my favorite for a while. There's been a revolving lineup of musicians in the band for many years, but the main songwriter, vocalist, guitarist, everything guy, Mr. Kakuzaki, if I mispronounced that.
I'm so sorry.
Man runs a tight ship, and they have kept a remarkably consistent sound over the years. You see a name like Intestine Baalism, you think, well, one, English, probably not these guys' first language. Baal as in Baal, you know, the old, what was he, like a Phoenician deity or something? And then intestine is like guts and stuff, you know, like shouldn't it be intestinal Baalism? Whatever. I'll let it pass. But you see that, you think they're going to be a pretty brutal death metal band. But if you know anything about a lot of the Japanese extreme metal, they have a penchant for doing very melodious stuff. And both of those concepts apply to Intestine Baalism. They are extremely brutal. They have a lot of suffocation influence. They can get very technical at times, but they also drift into almost melodic death metal and even melodic black metal territory. And it doesn't sound very cut and paste at all. They have a very unique sound to them and how they blend a lot of different influences. A lot of the old pictures of Seiji, you can see him rocking out in a shirt with the second Gorefest album cover on it, so that might be a good point of reference for a combination of melody and brutality. See, I told you it was brutal. He also does shrieky vocals and growly ones. And here you can hear that suffocation influence with these riffs kind of stumbling over each other, very chromatic. But we are going to shift seamlessly into more melodic territory right about now. You have this palm-muted melody sort of emerging out of the chaos as it implodes on itself. These guys have a really good sense for epic song architecture. They do a lot of cool stuff where they'll repeat a melodic riff in the background as sort of a cyclical thing and then lay down other layers of guitar over on top of it, and even bring in some more melodic leads while still keeping things very brutal and very dark. I would almost call this Castlevania core, if that's a genre. The guitar solos, they have a bit of Yngwie Malmsteen to them, but they're also heavily utilizing pentatonics, which is big in a lot of Asian traditional music. This album came out on Blackened Records in like 1997, so these guys have been around for a long time. Brett Stevens actually reviewed them many years ago, and he, of course, was very enthralled with this album. Even if it's a little melodic and fruity for him. He said it reminded him a bit of Cemetery with the odd floating melodies. That's a decent point of reference, but it makes them sound a lot less brutal than they actually are. This song's interesting because this one's Blasphemy Resurrected, and then it fades directly into the next song on the album, which is called A Place Their Gods Left Behind, which prominently features this melody, which is, again, very black metal almost. Speaking of black metal, how about these nasty, shrieky vocals? Very reverby drums, too. But this melody will become important later in the song once we get through a bit more shrieking and generalized blasphemy and nastiness, gore, all that kind of shit. I like the production on this. It's very old school. And then this little number is a very good counterpoint to that melodic riff because it's kind of bending it back into some more dissonant territory. They're balancing the twin poles of their sound very well. The more dissonant and the more melodic stuff. It's tough for me to get shorter samples from Intestine Baalism because they have such a grand sense of epic song architecture. You gotta hear all of it to understand how all the parts work together. The songs never feel boring, even if they're a bit long for very brutal death metal. Usually in the 6-minute range-ish. You also notice that he switches vocal styles as the music switches into more brutal death metal territory. He gets this very low, gravelly, cavernous growl instead of that piercing shriek. Let's see how they bring that initial melody back later in the song. Wow, this sounds like brutal death metal. This part's interesting because he switches between the styles of vocals as the riffing styles blend from dissonant to melodic. See, I told you that part was going to come back. Now it's this very repetitive, mournful lead melody with those heavy backing chords behind it. This might be the archetypal Intestine Baalism melody. A place their gods left behind / blasphemy resurrected lead guitar. And you can tell by the way that the drums are switching around, they're building up to something a bit more furious and emotional. Starts to incorporate more cymbals. And he's gonna pick it up a notch as we get closer to the emotional climax of the song. That's what I mean about epic song architecture. These guys are masters of pacing and presaging major melodic changes by utilizing different instrumental layers and little tricks like speeding the drum up or switching the vocal style up ahead of schedule. Or even the whole having two vocal styles thing. That's pretty interesting. And we bring in that lead, which isn't just showing off, it's intertwining with that melodic figure. But it also does a bit of shredding, don't you worry. Like that! And then that song sort of fades out into a nice acoustic bit. They do utilize acoustic guitars, mostly as just little segues and shit on the first album. Later on, they became a bigger part of their sound. Their second album took a while to come out. It came out in 2002, I think. It was called Banquets in the Darkness. And that one's interesting because some of the songs on that were very new. Some of the songs on it were actually written before Anatomy of the Beast came out. So it's a whole mishmash of stuff. He actually, if you get the booklet, you open it up, he recorded when he wrote each song. So it's sort of like this elaborate folio of different styles. So don't you worry, he definitely does the whole suffocation meets dissection thing plenty of times. Production on this is a bit more digital, might be more pleasing to modern death metal ears. These tremolo riffs actually remind me a bit of Decapitated, so you could see that he was keeping up with developments in the death metal scene at the time, particularly this riff. Sounds very Polish death metal, but it's still unquestionably Intestine Baalism. So definitely the brutal death metal quotient is still there, and it still leads into some very cool melodic death metal type shit with those dank pentatonic solos he's so famous for. I don't know if he's actually famous for them. He should be, because like I said, these guys are pretty much unequivocally my favorite death metal band, and one of the best death metal bands in the world, if not the best. I don't know if it's just their weird name or the simple fact of geography working against them. There's also a bit more black metal going on with these tremolo melodic riffs. That was one of the elements in the musical gumbo of the first release that gets quite a bit more play on this album. Very, very black metal, this song. It's called Memory. That first song was called Flesh for the 12th Omnipotent, by the way. This one's cool because it kind of has these melodies sort of emerging out of the chaos of that initial cymbal hit. And then more melodic stuff, more complex melodic stuff, I should say, coming out of that simpler tremolo riff. Again, the epic song architecture is in full effect. They also brought in a bit more of the old Swedish melodic death metal influence. This one's called The Planet, and it was one of the last songs written for the album. It can almost be an early Arch Enemy song at times, especially with those cool harmonies. Definitely reminiscent of the more heavy metal size stuff too, but with a bit of thrash thrown in there for a good measure. Which, I mean, if you don't like thrash, get the fuck out. I like this kind of very low gravelly voice with these melodic intertwining guitars. Not necessarily just straight up harmonizing, instead they're sort of swooping over and under each other, twisting around to make sort of a meta melody out of two conflicting melodic streams before being stapled together forcefully by these thrashier riffs. And then we had to wait another really long time, I think it was like 6 years, before the final, to date, Intestine Baalism album came out, with pretty much a whole new lineup, except for Seiji. Or no, I guess the drummer was on the second and third albums, and I believe he's still with the band. And you would think, well, given that the most recently written song on Banquet in the Darkness was so melodic, they'd move farther into that melodic death metal territory. But no, in fact, they spaced out their sound even more. The brutal parts are substantially more brutal. This one actually came out on No Colors Records, surprisingly enough. Same label as Graveland. This tremolo riff is going to get sliced and diced up into a breakdown. Very Suffocation-esque, possibly also influenced by their compatriots Vomit Remnants. I want to say the drummer on this album actually did some live stuff for that band, so maybe he brought that into the sound. The melodic parts, however, are still there. I'll feed you, baby birds, don't you worry, says Seiji Kaku. That guy I can't pronounce
Gook
words very well, sorry. Bringing back that old technique from the first album with this looping melody. Normally you'd think this is just some sort of melodic intro, but in fact it forms the backbone of another very bendy solo section to start the song off. This one's called Cry for the Black Sun. The first one was called Agony in the Stone Chamber, by the way. Really good bass playing in this part too. All three of the stringed instrument layers doing a lot of cool stuff. In addition to those more laid-back drum beats. Then it resolves into a very Castlevania core blackened death metal riff. Emotional but also evil. We are going to get to the triumphant return of those shriekier vocals as well on this song. Told you. It's got one of the most recognizable voices in extreme metal, I would say. That Seiji character. This is another case where they're going to bring that melody back later in the song and do some interesting stuff with it, but for now, we're going to get a cool counterpoint riff to it. Very cool counterpoint riff. Okay, let's see where they go with this. So we have so many layers going on here. We have there's sort of a reimagining of that initial melodic riff. We have an acoustic guitar in the left channel. Right channel, we got this weird jangly sort of thing, very In Flames Colony era Zombie Inc-esque. So you have all of these and those scale bass runs all winding together. The only way to make it more complicated would to be working another one of those super cool solos, which he does. So this one brings back that interesting sort of mirrored structure of A Place There Gods Left Behind, but for the new millennium. The thing about Intestine Baalism is either you don't know them or you think they're maybe the best death metal band of all time. That's the only two assessments I've seen of this band. It's either, who the hell is that, or holy shit, this is amazing. I've seen this song described as actually one of the best songs ever, which I agree with. Nice little tremolo reimagining of that initial melodic riff there as well, layered over those grindy death metal nasty riffs. So that about does it for Intestine Baalism. Unfortunately, they haven't done anything since 2008, but I'm not too worried. They always took a long time between albums. Apparently, Seiichi's co-guitarist, guy by the name of Kenji Nonaka, has a melodic death metal band called Another Dimension. I've only ever seen live clips of them, but it sounds like something I'd be very much interested in. Gonna have to track that album down. But for now, Intestine Baalism, mandatory listening if you like The Chasm, if you like Argosland, if you like Necrophobic, any of those bands that they play death metal that's melodic, but they're not melodic death metal, if that makes sense. Basically, it's sort of a weird sub-genre of the overall death metal musical scene thing that is probably my personal favorite. So 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100 for Intestine Baalism, and I will see y'all next week, hopefully.
I'm a saint. I believe in the Dark Lord. His time is coming very soon. Christ's worshippers will be slaughtered. Babies will be sacrificed on the altars of churches and temples to the Dark Prince. And fire will consume the good and the evil. I look forward to it.